Hey, it's Jason with V1 Drone Media, based here in Cleveland, Ohio, and I thought I'd make a video on getting airspace authorizations through LAANC or through the Dronezone. So you've got your drone and your Part 107 certificate. So now the question is, where can you fly? Under Part 107, you can fly in uncontrolled airspace without any further interaction with the FAA as far as getting an authorization to do so. The Part 107 certificate automatically allows you to fly commercially in uncontrolled airspace. But if you would like to fly in controlled airspace, class B, C, or D, for example, typically found around an airport, you'd have to apply for an FAA authorization to do so. There's two ways that you can do this. One is through an automated system called the LAANC, Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability, or through the Dronezone. If you're unable to get authorization through the LAANC network, you would have to apply for authorization through the Dronezone. So we're going to take a look at each of these and see how they work and how you can get authorization to fly in certain areas. So the way the LAANC system works is it's basically a grid around an airport, for example, that already has altitudes in it that would allow you to fly up to that altitude if you were in any given grid. So if we take a look, you can pull up these grids. If you go to Google and just type in FAA ARCGIS, you'll see the visualize it, see FAA UAS data on a map. If we click on that, it loads the ARCGIS website. Give it just a moment to load. And then once it's loaded, you can see in the top left, find an address or a place. So you can actually type an address in here and it'll take you right to that address. Or you could type in an airport code. So for this example, we're going to type in CLE for Cleveland Hopkins International. And you can see here under airports, it found Cleveland Hopkins International. If we click on that, it's going to take us to Cleveland Hopkins Airport. And you can immediately see the ring, the grid map that they've created around Cleveland Hopkins Airport. This grid is green, which means it is currently on the LAANC network, which allows you to get instant authorizations through an app instantaneously without having to go through the Dronezone and submit paperwork to the FAA, where you'd have to wait days or maybe even a week or more for them to approve or deny your request. So in the grid, we can see that there's numbers. These numbers represent the altitude that you're allowed to fly up to under the LAANC system. So for example, if we're in this grid right here over by North Olmsted, that's marked 100, we can fly up to 100 feet in that grid area. If we move just further to the west, we can see it's a 300. So if we're a little bit further to the west, which means we're further away from the airport, now they're allowing us to fly up to 300 feet in that grid area. There are some grids that have zeros in them. The zeros indicate that you cannot get LAANC authorization in those areas because you're limited to 0 feet. So essentially you cannot fly there. You would have to go to the FAA Dronezone to request an authorization to fly in those grid areas, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. If we look at another grid here, we go downtown Cleveland, Ohio. There's an airport, Burke Lakefront Airport, right downtown Cleveland. And there's a grid, as you can see, just like there is around Cleveland Hopkins. There's another grid around Burke Lakefront Airport, but that grid is red. And the reason that grid is red is because Burke Lakefront Airport is not currently on the LAANC system. It's not turned on yet. The grid is there, but they're not currently utilizing the LAANC network to issue authorizations. So whenever you see a red grid like this, and you can actually see another one right next to Burke Lakefront here at Cuyahoga County Airport. There's another grid, but it's all red. Whenever you see these red grids, it means that that airport is not utilizing LAANC to provide authorizations to fly. So you're going to have to go through the drone zone to request an authorization. There's a couple ways that you can get authorization through the LAANC system. One way is to use a computer, or you can also even use your phone with an app. The app that I've been using is called UASidekick. I'll link it below. There's also several other ones that you can use, and maybe I can throw those up on the screen here as well. These apps will allow you to get instant authorization even while you're in the field. You could be on location and be able to get right on your phone, draw out the area that you want to fly in, submit it to the FAA, and you can get authorization in as little as a few seconds with a certificate that says that you're approved to fly in that area and you're good to go. Some of these apps will charge you a fee. UASidekick is $5 a month in order to use the LAANC authorization network. They do have some other benefits to using the app for the $5 paid plan. I believe you get 2 authorizations for free just to try it out, so you can get a feel for how it works. It's pretty streamlined and pretty easy to use. So when we go into the app, you'll see a layout again where you can do a search. So you can type in an address or you can type in an airport code. So in the search bar, if I just type in Cleveland, Hopkins, and hit the magnify symbol, it takes me to Cleveland Hopkins Airport. And as you can see here, the grid pulled up just like we saw on the FAA ArcGIS website. So again, you can see the full grid with all the altitudes in it, and the grid is green. So we know that this airport is currently on the LAANC system. So let's say we wanted to create a flight up here by Fairview Park, just for an example. And we'll zoom in here on this 200-foot area. So what we're going to do is we'll go to Flight Planning at the top of the screen. We hit that. This opens up our flight planning menu where you can name your flight. You're going to select which aircraft you're using. You can load all of this data into the app when you get it. So you can have all your aircraft in there with their registration numbers, your FAA certificate number, and all your information, so that these just pull up in a drop-down menu when you go to use the app. So pre-flight planning, you're going to pick whether you're doing just recreational flights or commercial flights. You just put a checkbox in there. Operating area. So this is if you want to create a circle area for your operating area, or if you want to do a polygon. So for our purposes here, for an example, we'll do polygon. And that takes us back to the map. And if you read at the bottom, it says long press to begin polygon, short tap to add points. So if we just press and hold on the screen, it pops up this menu. We're going to hit start area. And then we can now draw a polygon area where we would like to fly. And I'm just doing this as an example right now just to show you how it works. Once you get the area that you want, you click the beginning point and it says, do you want to start over or do you want to end the area here? So we're going to hit end, and that drew our area. That's the area that we're going to be flying in now, that we're requesting authorization for. Once you're done with that, you'll click the OK button. That takes you back into your flight planning screen. So we've got our operating area set. Now down here it says altitude, surface to 400. If you remember on the grid, we're only allowed to fly up to 200 feet in this grid. So if we leave this at 400 feet, it's going to deny our authorization request because we're only allowed to go up to 200 feet. So we're going to change this 400 to 200. The next one is our operating time. You click on the little checkbox there, and this is where you're just going to put in your start time, date and time, and your end date and time. So how long you're going to be flying in that area. I'm just going to leave this as it is right now. It's giving us an hour by default, so I'm just going to hit OK. But you can change these to whatever you'd like. Now, if you look, it's showing LAANC eligibility. It's checking on if this will be approved or not. And it came up green, says auto approve is eligible. So more than likely, we're going to get approval to fly in this area for that date and time that we selected in that grid. Your contact information, make sure that's correct. You have to check these boxes. I will be available at this number during the operation per FAA regulations, and you have read and understand the FAA data collection, privacy statement, and submission requirements. You have to put a check box in both of those. And then any additional information you would like to provide as part of this authorization request, you can add that in the boxes. Once you're done with it, you're going to hit submit. I'm not going to do that. You'll submit it off, and you should get an instant approval allowing you to fly in that grid at that date and time up to 200 feet in this example. So just as a note, when you are looking to get FAA authorization to fly in these areas, the FAA ArcGIS website is going to be the master document as far as the altitudes are concerned. These other apps may have different altitudes, possibly. I've never run across that situation, but if that were ever to be the case, the FAA site, the FAA ArcGIS maps, will be the deciding document and have the final authority over the altitude that you can apply for in those grid areas. So the other way that you can get FAA authorization to fly in controlled airspace is through the FAA Dronezone, FAADronezone.faa.gov. So we'll take a look at how you would do that through the Dronezone here. The Dronezone is what you're going to use to register all your aircraft, apply for certain authorizations and waivers, and report any accidents that you might have. It'll keep track of all of this stuff for you in the Dronezone, so it'll let you know when certain registrations are set to expire, and you'd have to renew those through the Dronezone as well. Registration costs $5 per drone, and it keeps all of your inventory in there. So create an account on there, and then once you get signed in, you will see this dashboard. I'm under the Part 107 dashboard. In this case, this example, we're just going to use Part 107, that we're doing everything under Part 107. As you can see, I've got an inventory of multiple UAS drones that are registered. One pilot is registered. I've got several authorizations and waivers. Some of them are approved, some of them are expired. But this is the area that you're going to use when you need to use the Dronezone to request an authorization or a waiver. And to do that, you're just going to go over here to create Part 107 waiver authorization. And then you're going to pick which one you need to do. So the difference between an authorization and a waiver, if you read these here, the authorization is to request access to controlled airspace, and it's usually for temporary purposes. That could mean you're seeking authorization for a couple days. Sometimes maybe even a couple months you can get airspace authorization. For example, if you had an ongoing project, construction project or something like that, that would be ongoing for several months. If you're going to be to a confined area in a certain altitude, they may grant that for several months that you'd be good to fly in that area for. The waiver, on the other hand, is they're issued where the applicant can demonstrate safety mitigations through equipage that their UAS can safely operate in controlled airspace without seeking ATC authorization prior to each operation. So you're kind of on your own. The difference between these two, the biggest thing, is the authorizations are going to be easier to get than the waivers. The waivers are probably going to take a lot longer to be granted as well, and they're going to be highly scrutinized. They're going to be more scrutinized versus the authorization request. So we're going to click Airspace Authorization and start the application. In here, the first thing you'll see is an operation title. You can fill out the title here with what you want to call this specific authorization request. I'm just going to walk you through kind of what needs to be filled out. I'm not actually going to file anything myself for this example. We're just going to call this example. Make sure your responsible party information is all correct. Hit next. And then here's all of the information you're going to have to fill out for this request. Starting at the top is just your start date and month, or your start date with the month, day, and year, and then your end date. So again, if you're doing a construction project, this might span over the course of several months. So make sure you put how long that's going to be for your start date and end date here. The time frame, sunrise to noon, noon to 4, 4 to sunset, and night. The only way you're going to be able to get night is if you have a nighttime waiver associated, which you would have to attach to the authorization request at the bottom. The frequency, you'd select how often you're going to be flying in this area, daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. Your local time zone, so whatever time zone you're in. This here, you're going to write out a description of the proposed location for your operation. Provide the specific area within the class of airspace that you wish to operate. They want to know where you're going to be within that airspace. And then proposed max flight altitude above ground level. So earlier I told you that if you wanted to fly 400 feet in a 200-foot grid that's currently capable on LAANC, you wouldn't be able to do so because LAANC won't let you fly 400 feet in a 200-foot grid. So going back to what I had mentioned earlier, if you wanted to fly 400 feet in a 200-foot grid on LAANC, you will not be able to get authorization through the LAANC system to do so. You would have to fill out a Dronezone application for authorization to fly in that area if you wanted to go up to 400 feet. So this is the process which you're going to use, and you would put in the max flight altitude in this example that we're talking about specifically here. You would put the 400 feet. So moving on to the next section here, they're asking you for the latitude and longitude of where your mission is going to be. The easiest way to do this that I found is to use Google Earth. You can drop a pin on Google Earth and it will give you the latitude and longitude points. The next section here is your radius. This is the radius around the point that you're going to be flying in. So how big of an area do you need to accomplish what you're looking to do? A quarter mile to a half mile is typically fairly standard. If you start getting anything more than that, they may request additional information from you, but you can always give it a shot and see what they say. The nearest airport, you can put in the nearest airport identifier here of where you're going to be flying, and what type of airspace is that airport from the drop-down menu. The next thing is the description of your proposed operation. The description of your proposed operation is just a written description of the purpose of your operation, and they want to see the method by which your proposed operation can be safely conducted. So make sure you write up in here as detailed as you can of what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be keeping it safe. The bottom section is relevant existing waivers. If you have a pending or an approved waiver or authorization associated with this operation, you would click yes here. If it's already in the Dronezone, it'll show up down here and you can select it, and that will append that existing waiver or authorization to this request. If your authorization or waiver is not currently in the Dronezone, for example, a night waiver that was granted 3 years ago before everything went over to the Dronezone, which would be my case, my night waiver does not show up here in the FAA Dronezone. So what I would do is I would have to take my nighttime authorization number and add it to the very bottom of the screen where it says enter waiver reference numbers here. And I would enter that number in this box. And once you do so, it says make sure that you press the enter key after you have typed that in there. Once you've completed all this information on your application for the Dronezone, you would hit next, and it will give you the option to review all of the information. And if everything looks good, you can submit it off to the FAA, and at that point, it's just a matter of them reviewing the application, and they'll get back to you within several days or maybe a week, depending on how backed up they are. If you go into your dashboard and under the Manage Part 107 Waivers and Authorizations, you'll see the approved waiver once it's approved. You should also get an email sent to the email that you provided on the application request, letting you know that there's been a change in your authorization request. And if you go into the Dronezone, you may see it shown as approved. Once your authorization request is approved, you're good to operate under that authorization. I would just say to make sure that you do read these authorizations, go through them, and make sure that you fully understand what is in the authorizations. Sometimes there could be information in there that you need to make sure that you are abiding by to legally operate under that authorization. For example, you may have to call the tower and let them know 30 minutes before you go fly there. Or if you're flying at night, you need to make sure that you have a visual observer with you. Things like that. So hopefully this video helps you better understand how to use LAANC to get instant authorizations and or be able to use the FAA Dronezone to submit authorization requests to the FAA for review if you're not able to use the LAANC system to get authorizations that you might need. Let me know in the comments if there's any other questions that you might have on using LAANC or the Dronezone, or any other topics that you would like to learn more on, and I'll see what I can do about making a video on those too. So until next time, fly safe and have fun.